this because um, this topic, as you can see, is not, why being undefeated doesn't guarantee you money at all. Okay. I can think off the top of my fingers of a number of prominent undefeated fighters. In fact, most of the undefeated Hall of Fame fighters that I can think of in no way made the kind of money that people would have expected them to have. You look at Floyd Mayweather, a lot of people like to talk about Floyd, even Rocky Marciano, and these guys made a ton of money. They made money. They was good. And Floyd made the most money out of all the other people. But when you look at all the fighters who are undefeated, you're going to come to a conclusion and understand why they didn't make this ton of money that Floyd did. I'm going to break it down to you guys. Most of the fighters who made the bulk of money in boxing, ton of money in boxing, were never undefeated. Think of the Sugar Ray Leonards, the Muhammad Ali's, the Marvin Haglers, the Mike Tysons. The people who made a ton of money, they weren't undefeated. So for boxers out there, young boxers out there, I want you to understand, because I know when you can get the bag out there and make the most amount of money you can make, you get it. If it's in front of you, the bag's in front of you, go get the bag, okay? Ain't nobody telling you not to get the bag. But they feeding you a lie when they tell you need to be undefeated. And if you get the first loss, that's a damaging thing to your career and blah, 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 blah. Listen, I'm going to tell y'all what it is. I'm going to show y'all now in this video, in this stream, I'm going to show you who are the people that make the most money and why they made so much money, okay? Think first of Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson made a ton of money in his career, ton of money. Now, the IRS took a lot of his money. He didn't manage his money correctly. He lost his money away on women and on certain, luxurious things. So he didn't have money to save back. In fact, he owed money at the end of his career, and he's able to make that back. And because he's a good businessman, and because he's been an entrepreneur, and because he went into acting and all those things, he made back his money, right? And he's in a good position now today. But Mike Tyson made a ton of money in his career, of which different people pull away his money. His money came and it disappeared. Okay, I must say this: Mike Tyson lost a lot of fights, and even when he was losing fights, he was in big fights, making a lot of money, and that's the point. And if you look at the title of this video, the profile picture of this video, you're going to see the word super fight. Let me say it again. You're going to see the word super fight. What makes boxers filthy rich and in a position where, they can really set their future in order if they organize themselves correctly and still enjoy themselves, is you want to be in the biggest possible fights in boxing. It's not about whether you lose or whether you win these fights. And in fact, it's not about even you having an undefeated boxing record. We're talking money now. We're talking dollars and cents. We're not talking about now reputation of boxers and all of that nonsense. We're talking money. Those of you who are in pro boxing, you in it to get money, the prize, money, right? The way that happens, the only way that really happens where you make that kind of money, when you're talking about Mayweather money, whatever money you're talking about in boxing, to be able to make that kind of money, you got to be in the fights to make that money. There ain't no other way around it. There is no other way around it. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Super fights. What are super fights? A super fight is a fight in which the whole world stops to watch that. The whole world knows who those characters are. The whole world is waiting to see how this fight would turn out. Okay? That's a super fight. People will pay through their teeth to see a super fight because the whole world recognizes these characters. The whole world knows who they are, and the whole world is actually quite excited and also they're basically speculating. It blows their imagination, and people are wondering how would this matchup happen? What would happen if these two match up? So people would pay to see that. That's a super fight, and we've had super fights over the many different centuries of boxing. Start off with we had Muhammad Ali. One of the most famous super fights is Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier one. Okay, another great super fight is Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali pops up quite often. Muhammad Ali versus George Foreman, the Rumble in the Jungle. Okay, these are super fights. Okay, Sugar Ray Leonard versus Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Sugar Ray Leonard versus, you hear Sugar Ray Leonard's name multiple times as well. Sugar Ray Leonard versus Roberto Duran. Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Okay, super fights blow your imagination. Sugar Ray Leonard going up to middleweight from welterweight, fighting Marvelous Marvin Hagler was a big event all over the world. It was on they didn't have pay per view at the time. It was on whatever you call it, something television, right? Circuit TV, and people flocked to the place to see the fight. Right, it was the biggest fight out there. Made news. It was on TV, newspapers, everywhere. Right, that's a super fight. Now we haven't had a super fight since Mayweather versus Pac. I'm sorry, we haven't had a super fight since Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. I know. A lot of people be like, but it is what it is. It was a super fight. Mayweather versus Conor McGregor in a long time. I think we've had Canelo versus Triple G one was a super fight as well. It actually made news and all of that. So that's what we talk about. When we talk about super fights, we talk about the biggest possible fight in boxing. Was Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder? I think the third fight or super fight. One of them made almost $1 billion, over a million buys. Sorry, pay-per-view buys. A fight that's doing over a million pay-per-view buys sometimes is a super fight. I mean, of recent times, you know. So, but the point is, when you look at, let's say, okay, Andre Ward. Why did Andre Ward not become, a superstar? Well, globally, a global superstar in boxing. He's a superstar in boxing, but people in boxing know him more than just the average Joe. If I go right now and I ask my friend or my neighbor, do you know who Andre Ward is? They're not going to tell me unless they follow boxing, right? But if you say Floyd Mayweather, that name rings a bell. Manny Pacquiao, that name rings a bell. You know what I'm saying? Maybe Canelo Alvarez, maybe. All right, because Canelo Alvarez is a big name in boxing, right? Why does Canelo get the big fights? Well, let's start with Floyd Mayweather. So Floyd Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather is a superstar in boxing and made the the most amount of money ever in boxing, right? But why? Because Floyd Mayweather is involved in a number of big fights and then in a number also of super fights. Okay? Very important points. Super fight is the biggest fight you could possibly have, and then he was also involved in a number of big fights. When we look at, like, say, for instance, Andre Ward was involved in, one or two or three big fights. The biggest fight of his career was against Sergey Kovalev. That's where he got paid the most amount of money. Pay-per-view didn't do so great, but it was a big enough money fight for him, right? But nowhere near the level of the big fights that Floyd had, and then he never had a super fight. Andre Ward never had a super fight. We look at another undefeated legendary Hall of Famer in Joel Calzaghe. Joel Calzaghe had, some big fights at the end of his career, but he never also had a super fight. The closest thing he came to a super fight was against Bernard Hopkins in his career, right? The closest thing he came to a super fight wasn't a super fight. It was a tremendous fight, but it wasn't a super fight. And the world did kind of watch it and tune into that back in the days of HBO Max. But still, it wasn't a super fight, right? If you go, okay, so this is all how you know. If you go to anybody today and you ask them who Joel Calzaghe is, most of them don't know who he is. If If you ask them who Bernard Hopkins is, you might have more people tell you who Bernard Hopkins is, because Bernard Hopkins pretty much made that fight. This is his name that was written off of, not Joe Kazaki's name, because most people didn't know who Joe Kazaki was. In order to have a super fight, people need to know who both fighters are. Everybody knew who Conor McGregor was at the time, because he was the name in MMA. Everybody knew who Floyd Mayweather was because he was the name in boxing. So that's why Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather became a super fight. It was a crossover fight, and obviously we knew it was one-sided. But for people in boxing, for the people outside of boxing, MMA, and that kind of thing, they didn't know that. When you look at Mayweather versus Pacquiao, Pacquiao is again a superstar, Hall of Famer. These guys got it all. They got the legacy, they got the money, and they got the honor. They're all Hall of Famers, right? Considered some of the greatest fighters of all time. And so these guys had it all. But why? It's because these guys took the biggest possible fights in boxing. All right? It's not about, look at Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao is a multi, almost close to, he's a big millionaire. He's a tremendous millionaire. He's generated a lot of money in boxing. Okay? He's not undefeated. Okay? The current cash cow of boxing today, which is Canelo Alvarez, he's the cash cow of boxing today, I believe. He ain't undefeated. Okay? So I think it's a misnomer. It's a lie to believe that because you're undefeated, you're going to get more money and more money with every single fight. It depends on who you face. Who you face. I know of tons and tons of undefeated fighters. Y'all don't know the names too. Y'all don't know who they are. Okay, they started their career, they finished their career undefeated. Nobody knows them. Why? Because they were never involved in big fights. They were never involved in fighting the best or top 10 fighters even. They weren't even fighting top 10 fighters. Okay? So they come, they go, they're undefeated. They may have whatever, 40-something and whatever, and they lead the game, and nobody ever knows who they are. All right? Nobody ever knows who they are. Nobody ever cares. Because why? Because these fighters are not facing the competition to bring them that recognition. No matter what you say, boxing, and it's showing now because people don't have the money to buy pay-per-view like that, and they're having pay-per-views on a regular in boxing today. And the only way boxing is going to work, and only way boxing ever works, is when the fans think they're going to see a very, very competitive fight by two well-known, established boxers. This is why Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence will make money if these two guys would just settle their differences and get into the damn ring. It's going to make money because that has the potential to be, even if the first fight, even if it's the first, because they could have a trilogy off of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? They could have a trilogy off of this stuff. They could make some good money. And that's if Errol and Terrence sit down with each other and say, hey, boy, I want to make you some money. I want you to be my dance partner. And it doesn't matter who wins. It really doesn't. They both win. When you sit down at the table, don't get too damn greedy and get to work making compelling fights. If Canelo got a trilogy out of his fight with Triple G, Triple G was old as hell, and Triple G is still old as hell. Probably had no shot in hell of beating Canelo in that third fight. Triple G made some money off of that third fight, off of milking a system where the zone wanted it, and they got it, and it made money. It didn't make the biggest set of money, but it made money because why? We don't have the best facing the best like that, with reputations and a nice legacy behind them, right? Terrence has a decent legacy behind him, but he still hasn't faced the caliber of opposition of Errol Spence. Errol Spence has been building his resume and his opposition, and he has probably the best quality opposition in welterweight right now, right? He's faced the top guys in welterweight. He's about to face another top welterweight at 154. So he's building a beautiful resume. But it would be a crying shame for him, and it would be a crying shame for Terrence Crawford if they don't face each other. It would be like Riddick Bowe versus Lennox Lewis. It never happened. And that hurt Riddick Bowe's career. It didn't hurt Lennox Lewis's career so much as it hurt Riddick Bowe's career. Because Riddick Bowe was out of boxing after that. And he's constantly having to make excuses for that when that was a paycheck. Now, not to say that Riddick Bowe may have been in the condition to face a Lennox Lewis, because he was on the down decline, and we see what had happened to Lennox Bowe after all those fights with Evander Holyfield. But the point behind it is, either you retire from the goddamn sport, leave because you're not able to do it, and just tell everybody that, or you take on the challenge because that's a big fight, and that's a big money fight. But of course, Riddick Bowe had been in some huge super fights with Evander Holyfield, so hopefully he was good when it comes to money. You know what I mean? So probably he didn't need it, and he could have just retired from the sport, which he did eventually. But my point being that big fights make money. Okay? Don't let anybody fool you. All the antics Floyd Mayweather had and all of that, that's cool and all of that. But at the end of the day, Floyd was in big fights, and he won all his big fights. That's what made him. That's what made him. And you don't get big fights if you don't face the very best. There's no way around this. You can't hoodwink the system. You know, Jake Paul looks like he's hoodwinking the system right now, building this false hype. But one day he's going to have to step up to the challenge of facing, you know, a top fighter, a top contender or something like that. He's going to have to actually face actual boxers, and we're going to really know what he's about. You could only milk the system for so far, cheating it. One thing about Floyd, y'all can't knock him for it. He never cheat the system. He never cheat the system. See, that's the one thing that a lot of y'all out here trying to say about Floyd, which he never did. He never cheated himself. He always kept himself in tip-top shape. And he never cheat the system. What I mean by that is he still played by the rules. You got to play by the rules. You ain't going to make a whole set of money fighting no one that's at the top level. It's just not going to happen. Right? So, you know, at some point you're going to get found out and you're going to lose. You're gonna lose a fight. You're gonna lose a fight that, or you may not lose a fight, but you will. People will realize they're not gonna come to see your fights. Right? There's only so much you can do. You have to fight the top guy at some point. If you claim you're the top guy, you're gonna have to face the top guys. It's just what it is. Now, the difference between, therefore, Mayweather and even a guy like Rocky Marciano is these guys fought super fights. Okay, Pacquiao, same thing. Pacquiao fought super fights. This is why Pacquiao is such a big name in boxing. Everybody knows Pacquiao. A lot of people love Pacquiao, right? Over Mayweather even. Because another thing about Pacquiao was he had a fan-friendly style. So, you find that in boxing, I don't care what antics you use. The thing to do in boxing, and this is something I really want to say, because, you know, I feel like I should talk about this stuff. Shit, I hope you guys are hearing me all the way through with this video, because I just kept the camera too far away from me. I'm gonna pull it up a little closer. Hopefully I didn't block the microphone so that at a certain point y'all was hearing me or you weren't hearing me. I don't know. Sometimes I do some stupid stuff. But the point is, anyway, that in boxing, it's about securing, and listen, you securing the biggest fights possible, making the most amount of money you possibly can make. Then you got to hold on to your money. What I mean by that is you have to manage your money properly, have people trustworthy looking over your money, and not stealing your money from you. A lot of the old school boxers, they got money stolen from them, whether it's the IRS, they didn't pay the IRS, or people wasn't keeping tabs of that, or, you know, other people came by and they would take this fee and that fee from them, or steal money from them, the people who were supposed to manage money from them, and so they end up in the position that they are. You know, shout out to Evander Holyfield, and I know he's kind of strapped for cash these days because, again, this man made incredible grosses of money. I mean, he was in all the incredible fights. And this is what Floyd meant by you can't live off a legacy. Evander Holyfield has a tremendous legacy, but he's not making that legacy work for him, you know, because of his personality and everything. But really, Evander Holyfield should be in a tremendous position after all that money he made in boxing. Got to hold on to that money. Got to invest that money. And so it's not that these guys didn't make a lot of money. you know, but you have to make your legacy work for you. You have to make your legacy make money for you. Sugar Ray Leonard to this day, he makes his make. He's a smart guy with his money, and he makes his legacy work for him. You know what I'm saying? He makes his legacy work for him. Marvin Hagler's no longer around. Roberto Duran, he's making his legacy work for him finally again. I see Roberto Duran promoting fighters, and he's in the fight business still, right? And my point being to a lot of people to understand is that your legacy is very important. It's very important for you to make money. You can't make money off of a bogus legacy or a bone dry legacy. Legacy means the kinds of fights you fought. Legacy is about your reputation, your history. So that's what your legacy is, what you remember for. And you got to understand, you ain't gonna be remembered if you're not gonna be remembered if you ain't fighting the fights. If you're not fighting nobody, nobody's gonna know you first of all, and then nobody's gonna remember you, right? You have to fight those fights. It's the fights that make the difference. And every fighter wants to make money in boxing, but they don't want to fight the big fights these days. They're afraid to fight the big fights, which is weird because that's how you get your money. And I don't care if it's your promoters that are trying to back you down from those big fights or whoever. The sooner you can get into big fights and the sooner you can prevail and survive them, I don't care if you win or you lose. Once you're not broken, once you're not damaged, once you're not badly damaged or hurt or maimed in those big fights, they're great learning experiences. You can't trade in the learning experiences you get from facing another fighter with great skills and abilities. You're going to learn so much by fighting the big fights. The sooner you can get into the big fights where you're ready, when I say ready, I mean like mentally ready and physically ready for that, right? You have to be in a certain conditioning to be able to go into big fights because you don't want to be broken down early in your career because of too much wear and tear. But having said that, you have to jump. Listen, man, Floyd, when again, we're going to go to Floyd Mayweather. Floyd, when he was on the up and coming, he was voracious. He wanted all the big fights. He wanted all the smoke because he understood this is how you make the big bucks. This is how you get your value up, right? So he spent the greater portion of his career, the early portion of his career from 1998 to 2007, which is, I don't know what that is. What is that? That's 10 years. The first 10 years of his life, okay? He was spent just trying to build his brand to the max, get the biggest possible fights he could. And to this day, in his entire career, not to this day, but at the end of his career, all he was looking for was the biggest possible fights. The only fight in which he did not fight the biggest possible fight was, of course, the Andre Berto and the Conor McGregor fights. Them last two, he didn't try to fight the best. He didn't try to fight the biggest names in boxing. Okay? He didn't. All right? He lived off of his legacy from there, his reputation, and he coasted with the last two fights. And then to this day, as he's retired, he's living off his legacy. This is what he's living off of, his reputation. Okay? He got it all. He got the money. He got the Hall of Fame credentials. He got that legacy of being the best boxer ever and so on. And all of that only builds his brand, and he can live off of that now. Even though that's not what he's doing necessarily, he's doing other business and trying to make sure he generates money through other businesses. But the point is, he can live off of that now. Okay, and he has his own promotion company and everything. So you have to watch it. If you're going to follow the Mayweather green print, blueprint, whatever you want to call it, understand that you've got to fight the big fights. All right. So the difference between Andre Ward, Joe Calzaghe, some other guys whose names I can't even mention because y'all don't even know who they are. There's several of them who, some of them are Hall of Famers, some of them are not. They didn't fight the big fights. They didn't fight the super fights. They didn't have any super fights. So this is what you guys got to understand. All right. For the young and upcoming fighters, you gotta have super fights if you're gonna make money. So this is what I was gonna say. People talk about Andre Ward's, personality and stuff, and that's why he didn't have, the big money. No, Andre Ward just happened to be in divisions where you just didn't have no super fights. That's the problem with Andre Ward. With the case of Manny Timothy Bradley, who he has losses on his record. Okay, Timothy Bradley was in some of the most exciting fights, and he actually was he in a super fight? I wouldn't say he was really in a super fight. Bradley never really. I think Timothy Bradley never was in a super fight, but Timothy Bradley was in some big fights. Some big fights. Again, no super fights really for Timothy Bradley. He'd been in some really big fights at 140, particularly. At welterweight, he had one or two big fights, mostly with Pacquiao. And, but the point is, you got to be in super fights. Super fights change everything. So the super fight, Mike Tyson was in a couple of super fights later on in his career. You got the Holyfield two fights, and he got the Lennox Lewis fight. Who else did he have? That was a super fight. He had one or two other couple super fights, and then he had a lot of big fights. Tyson's the guy that made the big fights. I think he was the first guy to break a million pay per view buys, right? So, um, you gotta get these guys their props because, again, if you're talking about knowing the business of boxing, then you have to understand how the business of boxing works. You're not just gonna come out of nowhere, all right, and become a superstar. That's not happening. You become a superstar by building. You build into a superstar. All right. Similarly, you ain't gonna just have a super fight just like that. It's not just gonna pop out of nowhere, right? You had to build a reputation. Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford are building a reputation. Errol Spence about to face, I think it is, the last of the legitimate primary champions in his division, right? This is the last one. He's cleaning out everybody. So this is the last guy, which is Keith Thurman. He didn't face Keith Thurman. So the only other champion he wouldn't have faced at welterweight in his division, legitimate either former or present world champion in the division, would be Terrence Crawford. That would be the last guy that Errol Spence would have to face. So if Errol Spence cleans up shop, beats all the former world champions, jumps back down to 147, I believe that Errol Spence, to be honest with you, wants to fight Keith Thurman at 154. They're saying to test the waters at 154 maybe, but more so, I think Errol wants to face Keith Thurman at 154 because he does not want to give him a shot at the title at all. They're saying you need to face Keith Thurman. All right, fine, I'm gonna face Keith Thurman, but I'm not giving him a shot at the title. I don't think Errol Spence wants to reward Keith Thurman for blanking him. He say, all right, you can fight me, but you ain't gonna fight me for no title. I think that's basically where Errol Spence put his foot down. Now, some people say when Errol Spence tastes 154, he's not going to come down to 147 and fight Terrence Crawford. And of course, Errol Spence had said before that, this would have been the one and last shot Terrence Crawford would have at getting at, undisputed. But let me say this: which look better on Errol Spence's resume, and which gives him even more clout at 154? Is it undisputed at 147, or is it unified at 147? And to be able to make history, and not just make history, but have a tremendous fight, which will make money. That's a money fight. Terrence Crawford fight is a money fight. Does Errol Spence want that money? Does he want that money? That's the question. And the same thing for Terrence Crawford. And I don't need to hear Terrence Crawford haggling over a whole bunch of money issues. I mean, you try to get as much as you can get. So if you're trying to get as much as you can get, hell yeah. But at the end of the day, you doing like you some A side or something? Just go in there, beat his ass, and after you beat his ass, you get to dictate what happens next. That's all. I don't understand why this is such a big deal. Guys have done it through the centuries. If Errol the A side, somebody got to be the A side. So it's gonna be Errol. Take whatever the man say, whatever demands he wants. This is what Devin Haney did. This is what a number of other people do. Right? Terrence Crawford is 34 years old, but 34 is relatively young in these times. He can go on and fight in other divisions and do his thing. Take what the man offer you, beat his ass. He may want a rematch, maybe he won't, and then move on to the next. You know what I'm saying? It's that simple. And sometimes these guys haggle over things that really shouldn't be haggled over. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, that's a big fight. You want as many big fights under your belt. You want as many big fights. And Terrence is not a guy that turn and duck and dodge nobody. I don't believe in that nonsense either. I just think they're haggling over money that really ain't that important. Let the thing make the money it make sure you get paid whatever you get paid. If you beat Errol Spence ass, he won't want to turn around, maybe rematch you, maybe at 154, wherever. But guess what? Two things, very important. You undisputed. That means your money value could just went up, right? Because you just made history. Now you two-time undisputed, okay? And you move from there. I mean, I don't know about these guys, right? I think sometimes they're not really. They know what the game is. They know what boxing is. They're not stupid, okay? They know what boxing is. And for all this hold up on a fight, which of course we as fans will think it's a hold up. Of course, they thinking this is unreasonable, whatever. Sometimes you just have to just do it. Just like how he went across the seas to Scotland and beat up, you know, the champion there. You crossed the pond, you did your thing, you came across. They want to look like they want to screw you over, kind of like that's what you think at least. But you still do it. You still make it happen. Make sure it's all well and good, and you make it happen. You ain't the A side, but you still make it happen. Then that's it. You know what I'm saying? What people need to understand is that you mustn't get in your way of making a big fight happen. Don't get in your way of making a big fight happen. That's what I would tell anybody out there. Because the payoff, and if you're confident in your skills, you already know how it's going to go down. The payoff for that is huge. You know what I'm saying? The payoff for that is huge. You go up to the next weight class, and there's an undisputed champion up there. And you become 3-time undisputed. That's when the paychecks start coming in. The monies, the networks start making offers to you. You know, that's where the Canelo money started happening. Because your legacy makes it all happen. Your legacy makes it all happen. And Terrence he still doesn't get the money that he's supposed to be getting. But that will happen when you start kicking into gears and kicking ass. What your fans want to see. And this is an opportunity of a lifetime for Terrence, particularly, to turn his resume around. If he beats Errol, who's a very popular fighter, if he beats Errol, now he got Errol supporters behind him. Everybody's behind Terrence now. And he's go up to 154 and do it again. If they don't duck and dodge you. You know what I'm saying? But if you go with the narrative that he don't sell, and now you don't even want to have the fight, or it looks like you don't want to have the fight because you the contender. He not a contender. He the guy sitting ready and easy. You the one that had to cow down to his demands. He the A side. You're not the A side. And you keep on proving that you're not the A side because you can't sell shit. Right? You didn't sell anything out with BLK. You didn't sell out nothing. You may sell out your arena in Omaha. But you didn't sell out nothing. So you just made a stronger case for Errol Spence. So now what you need to do is humble your damn self and go up there and make sure you make that fight so you can get that win. You know, I just don't understand fighters today, man. They think they helping themselves with money or whatever. I'm not saying he's not comfortable. But if you're coming into boxing and you know that this is a temporal sport, you can stay there forever. You try to make the most amount of money you can. And if you turn down such a big fight like this to go and fight scraps, not fighting no names. So far you haven't fought. The only name you fought was Sean Porter. Top 10 fighter. That's it. Nobody else. You can talk about David Adenisi and all them guys you want, how much you want. But you ain't facing nobody. And people are going to call you out on that. So your legacy is going to the crap. And on top of that, you ain't making no damn money. And boxing's about making money. You understand me? You hear me? And so far, you ain't setting yourself up to make a lot of money. You setting yourself up to get out the game. In which case, then you found out. You found out. You're not about that. You're not about that work. You're about the money. And again, of course, pro boxing is about money. It's about making money. But in order to make the money, you got to fight the fights. And so far, Terrence Crawford, other than Sean Porter fight, he ain't been fighting the dudes. He ain't been fighting former world champions, real former primary world champions. David Avanese never been a champion, not a primary world champion. And don't tell me you can't get the fights because you had the fight in your hand. You had the Errol Spence fight right in front of you. And what you do? You stepped away. You stepped away. Are you really serious about this or not? Y'all not serious out here. Y'all not serious out here. You got a big money fight in front of you, and you step away from that. The opportunity of a lifetime to become undisputed. You step away from that. I'm trying to make people understand what I'm saying. That don't make no money sense. Because no matter what, whether they shortchange you on that deal or not, you get the W on that deal, you sitting pretty after that. You're sitting pretty. And you know what? The sad thing about it is, guys who are not A sides will jump at that opportunity. Guys who are B sides. Because a lot of these fighters out here, they don't think with a contender mentality all the time. They talk like they want to be contender, and then they turn around and they behave like they A side. They still want to act like they the A side. If Errol Spence got something you want, ain't nothing going to deter you from coming to get it. You look at Devin Haney. Devin Haney's acting like he's the B side. Whatever Lomachenko asking, whatever, they cut out to it. Because what they want is to fight. They want to fight. Do you want to fight or not? Do you want to fight or not? Are you going to make excuses? Because they're going to find things and just say, oh, he made excuses. They're going to do that because they don't want to fight you like that. Do you want to fight them like that? So telling us the fighters want to fight each other, but they ain't fighting each other. Oh, come on now. Let's stop that nonsense. Let's stop that nonsense. We know Ivan Redkach wanted that fight, and his promoter blocked him. Okay? His promoter blocked him. Right? He trying to get out of contract with his promoter. That's not the case with Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. That's not the case with Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. If y'all serious about the fight will happen. Because the fighters, it come down to the fighters. Ain't no excuse nowhere. It's Errol Spence telling Al Heyman, I want that fight, make that fight happen for me. Make that fight happen for me. I don't care what it takes. Make that fight happen for me. Is that what he's saying? So, if them guys don't want to fight each other, which is sad, because that's a fight people will watch. Probably, they probably, y'all might be able to run a rerun on that if it turns out to be good. Get a rerun on that. Milk that mother. You know what I'm saying? Whoever comes out the winner, man, they'll be great. It'll be fantastic. Whoever comes out the loser, guess what? They come out fantastic too. That's a big fight. It's a big fight. And no matter winner or loser, their status is going to increase, and therefore their money is going to increase. That's a big fight, y'all. It's not going to wreck nobody's career. Nobody's going to get a wrecked career off of that fight. So, what I'm saying is, the only way fighters are going to be able to grow, benefit, make the most amount of money is to go through the fights. People keep on talking about Pacquiao. Mayweather wanted that fight. He wanted that fight with Pacquiao bad. Did Pacquiao want to fight as bad as Mayweather wanted it? No. Who pulled out the first set of negotiations? Pacquiao and his team. They pulled out, just like our Bud pulled out of the Errol Spence negotiations. Errol Spence didn't pull out of nothing. Bud pulled out of it. Bud pulled out of it. Pacquiao pulled out of Mayweather negotiations. If you really want to fight, there'll be no limit to what you would accept. You go through the motions. Once you start to say, oh, well, because the A side called the shots. Errol Spence side called the shots. And now Terrence is going to have less leverage power. Somebody got to be the B side. And if you humble yourself and say, I want this fight. So I'm going to do what it takes to get this fight. See what I'm saying? And that's not what's happening in boxing today. In boxing today, you got two guys who used to be in the A side and one don't want to become the B side. And they talk all kinds of shit. And they say A side and B side don't matter and all kinds of crap. But somebody got to be the B side. And that's the thing that kind of hurts boxing. You know, it kind of hurts boxing. Um, so we don't get the mega fights. We don't get big fights. And it's sad because you would think this is what boxers, they're working their ways towards. Is these big fights. They're working towards it, right? That's the whole point. The biggest possible prize you can get at welterweight right now is Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence. The biggest possible fight on the horizon, at lightweight is Devin Haney versus Tank Davis, or Devin Haney versus Shakur, or Devin Haney versus Vasily Lomachenko. Those are the biggest fights in that division because those are the most qualified guys in that division. Those are the most proven guys in that division. Those guys have, multiple world championships between them. Those are the fights to have at lightweight. At super lightweight, we talking Regis Prograis, a fight with Regis Prograis and Josh Taylor too, or Regis Prograis and some top contender guy right at the point in time. But the biggest possible fight would be Prograis versus Taylor too, bar none. Those are the only two world champions right now. You know, those are the fights that need to happen. And it's kind of sad because it's like we know there'll be big fights. We know there'll be action-packed fights. We know there'll be great fights for the fans. But the fighters don't. One side don't want to have it. You see, and that's the problem with boxing today. The problem with boxing today is good business, where the best face the best, which has always been what boxing is, and that's why it's an anthem. The best facing the best. It's something that these younger boxers, because they have had early success in their careers and stuff, in terms of titles and stuff, they want to protect that success and instead of push forward, push the anvil forward, show everybody that they're the best, and therefore, once people realize the brand is really good, they're gonna buy into it, and then we can get super fights down the road. Right? You're gonna face one fighter at a time, so I understand that. But still, and the sanctioning bodies need to stop trying to protect fighters like that. It takes away from the really great fights that we could possibly get as fans. And then we will spend our money on pay-per-view. We're not gonna spend money. Fans are not gonna spend money on pay-per-views that are not pay-per-views. They're not pay-per-views. They're showcases. They're not pay-per-views. And you can tell me about Mike Tyson till your eyes drop in the 90s. Ain't nobody buying into that rubbish. People are going to pay to see the best face the best. They don't have money in these times for the best versus an okay guy. They ain't going to spend money on that. I'm going to catch you guys later. So that's the difference. It's not about being undefeated. That is a factor. But it's in the big fights that a fighter gets into. That's where you make the most money. And also, understand that you can only have big fights. The biggest fights you possibly get in boxing because they're the best fighters in boxing. So you have to have the best matchup with the best. That's just the way our boxing works. I'm going to catch you guys later. I am what you need. Peace and out.